Tereza, can I take the opportunity while we wait to maybe ask Mina if she can drop the email and the URL of the ConfTech, and the email is for the ConfTech help desk. So anyone who needs help with, who needs the advice on how to transition from on-site to online or hybrid, please do let us know. There's a live chat on the URL which Mina just posted. Thank you, Mina, for that. And you can also reach out to us via conftech@diplomacy.edu. Although I am talking about the ConfTech, as I said during the track 3, it's not just myself, but there is a whole team of experienced people who are ready to help and who have been assisting a lot of countries and organizations already with advice and in some cases even hands-on support. Tereza stopped me immediately.
Thank you. I will stop you, Stephanie. Thank you for sharing. But Jovan, you're 9.5 minutes late. But thank you for joining us anyway. We've just been talking about good time management of online meetings.
Yeah, and we failed big time. We didn't have a coffee break, but it was a fascinating discussion. I have to admit that I haven't attended recently such a rich discussion in webinars. We had Ambassador Emil Brix, historian, who put things into historical perspective. We discuss if it is the turning breaking points in the history or just something which will be the footnote in historical books. Very rich discussion which ended at the end on discussion what type of salad we need to prepare in order to save the UN, what type of ingredients do we need, and then metaphors. We got carried away with the metaphors. There were a lot of spices, there was a lot of wine, there was a lot of oil, but discussion was ranging from geopolitical issues and the question of reform of the UN to the question, is the machinery ready for a change, UN machinery, or political masters, they don't allow it? And to the point of the very, very specific questions of the perception of the UN, better communication, and the need to move very, very fast. Very eloquent speakers, critical points. I would say discussion more on pessimistic than optimistic side. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Jovan, for summarizing track 1. Once again, you will have an opportunity to follow up more in depth on all these tracks that we will be quickly summarizing. First, we will have a report that will summarize the main points in a bit longer time than the 1 minute we have here, and the recordings of all sessions will be available. Now over to track 2, which was led by Katarina Höne. Katarina.
Thank you so much. And I'm also glad we will have the recording and the summary, because there's no way I can do justice to the discussion in track 2. As a reminder, track 2 looked at practices, protocol, and procedure. We talked a lot about diplomatic practices and how they are changing before our very eyes, and how diplomats have this task of adapting. And they're actually, it was on a very positive note. They're in a good place to make these adaptations. We made a couple of distinctions in terms of formal and informal meetings, transparency, security, and trust, and how they work offline, so to speak, and how they translate online, and if so, if they translate in what way, and what are the challenges. We talked a bit about challenges for small and developing countries. We also talked about the different phases of negotiation and how some of these phases lend themselves actually really well to be translated online or to be handled digitally, and how other phases struggle a lot more with being translated online, or with diplomats not being able to meet in informal spaces. There's a lot more I could say, but generally speaking, it was a very rich discussion all the way through the coffee break. And with a very positive sense, actually, with a kind of sense of we need to look into the future and keep adapting to what is happening, and with a certain excitement to actually make these adaptations and make the best of the various opportunities going forward. On that note, I will end, but refer everyone to the summary and to the recording to catch up later.
Thank you very much, Katarina. Going to track 3, which was led by Stephanie Borg-Psaila. Stephanie, please.
Thank you, Tereza, and thank you for all the colleagues who intervened in the chat tree. It made it a very lively discussion, and in fact, we also missed the coffee break. I think most of us did. All right, so again, I won't be able to do justice to the vibrant conversation, but I'll just summarize maybe a few key points. The first one is well done to Katarina for the excellent report. I think that was a point that a lot of the colleagues in the room mentioned. The report really captures the common but the differentiated circumstances, especially in the global hubs, New York, Geneva, and in the other main hubs. At the same time, there are challenges which are, let's say, common among small and developing countries. First and foremost is the issue of connectivity and the infrastructure. So that's a really, let's say, big problem. And tied to that is the comment that maybe the governments do need to step up a little bit in order to focus on expanding internet access and increasing the coverage. Also challenges related to the equipment, to skills, and also to the limitations of the energy provision, something that a lot of us take for granted. But if there is no electricity, it's simple. You do not have neither the technology, the hardware, nor the internet access. So that's extremely important. Also, the issue of time zone. So it's a sword that cuts from both edges, because the internet has facilitated the participation of stakeholders from wherever they are based, thanks to the internet. But at the same time zones, they are what they are. If at the capital, the experts at the capital, it is, let's say, 2 a.m., as in the case that Marisela was telling us, at 2 p.m., what do? Do you wake up the colleagues, or do you just have to say, the delegations from the from where the time zones are, in the morning or working hours? That's easier for them, but tougher for us. Also, the analysis of what's to come, it's quite positive. It was quite positive. We are getting there. There is more or less global solidarity, or at least that is the experience of our colleagues at the hubs. And also one final point, interesting comment on the need for the open source platform. And we have, and it will be reflected in the summary, some of the, let's say, items on the wish list for an open source platform that especially takes into account the nuances that diplomats face. Back to you, Tereza. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Stephanie. Track 4 was led by the Director of Cybersecurity and E-Diplomacy Programs at Diplo, Vladimir Radunović. Vlada.
Thank you, Tereza. Let me start my 15 minutes address with the following 3 elements that we discussed. Again, an amazing discussion or amazing, people around. That's important. One is what are the critical elements of diplomacy that will be very hard to be moved online. The focus is again on corridor talks, on personal relations, on this spontaneous small coffees and all of that. Whether that can be moved online, we tried to dive into details, and that left open to discuss further, maybe for researchers. So what is the essence of diplomacy? What are these little things like physical space, distance, smells, being spontaneous, all of that, whether that can be translated online or not. Some of the ways to look at how things are changing, one way is to introduce hybrid diplomacy or move back to the role of the embassies, so that the embassies actually will be the ones who enhance their role of these informal communications instead of high-level and ministers themselves traveling with shuttle diplomacy and all of that. So the roles of embassies will be, again, important. The other one is the gaming platforms, which provide 3-dimensional virtual realities, which can bridge these even settings, protocol settings, distances, drinking coffee, all of that could be possible. The third way is the new generations are coming. The new generations of diplomats which are prone to gaming, social media, they might even not know these elements of all diplomacy. They might even find a way without that or replacing with some other aspects. The second discussion was on all the positive and negative sides of online space. Basically, the message is being cautious in analyzing more in-depth positive and negative sides. For instance, it's important to underline equality in participation and the problems with equality in participation, and that we have participation, not observation, in online discussions. That there is no secure place. That's one of the biggest deals, is that we can't really hope for much of the confidentiality, even in very secure environments online. The third one is this distraction, being click away from all the different other content. The paradox of plenty, we think transparency is there, we have all this information, but we might be overloaded, and even diplomats feel like they're missing to communicate some information well enough, even though there is so much information. That transparency is not only about public opinion, it's not about tweeting only. Tweeting can be causing a false sense of transparency. Transparency is also about transparency within the diplomatic circles while keeping the confidentiality there. And the last bit is what comes next. One comment was that online meetings are only one step towards the next technologies: gaming, virtual reality, augmented reality, well, maybe moving to some sort of a matrix world in a positive sense. Back to you, Tereza.
Thank you very much, Vlada. Finally, track 5 also obviously had fascinating discussions, and I can't wait to help summarize it in the report to share with all of you. But some of the main questions that we have addressed is, what are the new diplomatic training needs, and how can we prepare diplomatic training for the next global crisis? So, many of the points that we discussed, I can see how nicely complementary there are to the other tracks. So we will try to show these interlinkages in the report. But in a nutshell, diplomatic skills are more important than ever. And there are some new types of skills that diplomats should have. Some of them that our speakers have described include strategic thinking, online skills, how to operate in the online environment, being open to continuous learning. We have also talked about that in these online interactions and negotiations that obviously are quite different. There is, for instance, much more need to rehearse our interventions because we cannot feel the feel. We cannot read some signals. So it's very essential to practice online environment, being open. I apologize, I don't know what was that, but I didn't practice that. Anyway, Yolanda Spies, our speaker, had a very good analogy to physical therapy. So for instance, if you're treating a shoulder injury and you go to see a physical therapist, you don't just treat the shoulders in the muscle. You actually train many muscles that are not directly in the shoulder, but are around and support this muscle. So that is kind of, not to have a short-sighted approach to what skills we train and build in our new diplomats. It is essential to recruit the right people with the right profile, because we should realize that diplomats are not only important for our countries, but also for humanity. They also need to have some kind of curator skills, because when we have this overwhelming information around, they need to be able to filter them, curate them, to figure out what is important. Going to points that were raised by Ambassador Stefano Baldi, it was a lot about another important skill for new diplomats, and that is to understand numbers, statistics, and be able to interpret data, because numbers can easily be used against you. So it is very important that we really work on these skills. And last but not least, we had an intervention on Zoom, or let's say online platforms, as a complementary teaching tool. This was a good opportunity for Andres Saramago to explain Diplo's pedagogy and methodology of online learning and using platforms, and how Zoom and kind of more hunger and need for video conferences changes this practice. With this, I'm afraid we've exhausted the time of this conference, or rather exceeded, which means I will not sleep well. I always try to stick to the time, and we have failed, but I hope you apologize us. It was certainly a lot of rich content that we had to cover. Our biggest thanks goes once again to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Finland, which made possible not only the research and the report, but also this event. Thank you very much, Ambassador Kauppi. Thank you to the Finnish Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Definitely big thanks goes to all our speakers and experts, Katarina for working on the report, but last but not least to anybody who made this event possible from Diplo's creative lab, from Diplo's technical team. To put such a conference with various tracks together is not an easy task, but I think we have managed today. Thank you very much. Please be in touch. Please brace for the conference report that should be coming in a few days, and we are looking forward to further interactions with you. Have a good afternoon and evening or day, and see you next time. Bye-bye.